What dreams do you have in your heart? And are you ready to make them a reality? Are you also ready to partner with God on the roles and responsibilities that you have so that you can become the woman that you're ready to be? Today's show is for you.
We're so excited to welcome a beautiful guest, Jeanette Bennett. She is a magazine publisher and mom. She's a cancer survivor. She's a warrior. She's a woman who is willing to show up and do things that only she can do in this world. She wants you to know that you are too. So join us today for another episode of Go and Be.
Hello and welcome to Go and Be. I am Michelle McCullough, joined with Christy Gardner, and we are so thrilled with our next guest, Jeanette Bennett, who is a longtime business friend of mine, and I am thrilled for her to come into our conversation today on Go and Be. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. We've crossed paths in a lot of different ways. This is the first time we've been on camera together, I think.
I know, and maybe it'll not be the last.
I hope not.
We're so excited to welcome you because you are an advocate for women and women standing in who they are. And I really love this idea that you've shared with us, and we want to share it with our listeners and our viewers about being the woman that only you can be. So you have this really great story. Let's jump in.
Okay, all right. I recently decided to run for office. There was a special election for our state senate, and I was encouraged to run. And one of the things I always wanted to avoid with politics was fundraising and campaigning for a year. So a 3-week election allowed for those things I was scared of to be smaller. And I worked super hard for 3 weeks, including over Christmas, and I didn't win. And actually, I'm totally at peace with it, and I really mean that. But I'm still unraveling the lessons I've learned, and one of them that will stick with me. So the night that I lost, I was like taking that in, because mentally I had prepared to be in the legislature. Like mentally, I had like envisioned winning, and I didn't win. So I was in my backyard, in our hot tub, praying and basically, telling God, thanks for all of the help the last 3 weeks, but I'm a little confused because I don't know what to do now. Like, I feel like I have a few things I could do. I could write this type of book or maybe speak more or do these different things or another political run. And the answer that I felt like I got was, I need you to do the things only you can do. And that eliminated some of the things on my list of should I, of these paths. I'm like, well, there's a lot of people who can do that. That's not my unique gift. So now I'm focusing on what are my unique gifts. And I know what some of them are, but I'm just exploring that and trying to keep the line open with heaven to figure out more about what are the unique things that maybe only I could do with my background or network or whatever it is that God has done to prepare me. So that's where I'm at right now, is figuring that out. So that was my latest life lesson.
But I love that because I think that you're still evolving, and I've known you for a decade, maybe
at least.
15 years. And I've watched you grow and build big things, events and expos and magazines and working with clients to do their own pieces. And I know that your background has been in journalism for a long time and that you've kind of really stayed in that path. But I've also seen you kind of veer in different directions over the years that brought you to this point. And so tell us a little bit about how you have your own path. What does that look like? How have you followed that? And how has God been a part of that path with you?
That is a great and loaded big question. So we started the magazine 20 and a half years ago, and that felt very God-directed. And the things that got me to that point, I got my education in journalism and worked for the New Era magazine and the Deseret News. And then it really felt like this was the path for me. I was a new mom and leaving behind a job that I love because I was staying home and wanting to be the mom that my mom was and everything, but then I started to feel pulled to entrepreneurism as the answer to using my education experience and also trying to be the mom that I wanted to be. So entrepreneurism became that path. And from the very start, I felt that God was with me on the path, even though it was so unlike my sisters and my mom and my young women leaders and things. And so the trick has been to kind of keep him included along the way because, like you said, a few things have veered and happened. But another lesson of this last year, so a few things happened to me this last year. One of them happened to all of us, which was COVID, right? And that impacted our business very significantly.
Live events.
Yes, yes, and publishing. No one wanted to buy an ad when they were closed, you know? So it was a tricky thing that we've navigated. And then I also went through a cancer journey this past year. So those things happened to me. And part of why I decided to run for that race, which is first race I've ever run for, is that I wanted to happen to my life. Like, I wanted to not just deal with what was happening to me, but I also wanted to just put my flag in the ground and say, I want to take some action now. I choose this.
I'm an agent.
Yes,
of
yes.
my life.
And I think I became a little more like just waiting for life to happen to me. And then I feel like I found myself again when I was like, no, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to do something hard, which has sort of been a pattern. I've tackled some hard things. I think part of me is just stubborn or competitive. I don't know what it is, still figuring myself out, but I like to do something that's hard and take those actions. It's really hard, I think, when you're a mom because so much does happen to you.
Sure.
And you're balancing
Reactive.
needs of everyone around you. And so it can be really easy to just react. And I feel like I've been in that mode a lot. But at times we need to look for what could I choose, what could I take on, or sometimes not even take on, sometimes take off, you know? That's my choice.
Right.
You know, it's empowering.
I love how you're talking about being an agent of your life. And I love that you were willing to step into failure. Because I think the only reason you are a success in life and what people would view as a success, whatever that means, is because you are willing to be vulnerable and step into places where you have the chance to not succeed. And we try to normalize failure in our home. We have
great.
Sarah Blakely, who speaks about failure, and lots of people speak about failure. What has failure, or maybe not success, or however you want to frame that word, what has it meant to you on your journey?
Well, one of the things is when you fail and the sun still comes up the next morning, your family's still there, you still have relationships intact, you still have your testimony, you realize that didn't really change a lot, that I failed at something. And that's kind of empowering, actually.
Yeah.
Because you realize you do have freedom to fail. Life goes on. And one of the things that I've also found is when I've shared, either with social media or in real life, a failure, it connects me to people. People like to hear those stories, and I don't think it's because they're negative. I think it's because they see that, oh, you failed and you're learning from it.
Yes.
And I connect with that. And so actually I have become less afraid of failure. You know, I'm in my mid-40s and I am in some ways not as great as I was in my 20s, maybe physically or whatever, but in the wisdom that I have is definitely increased, and that's one of them.
Right.
Failure's fine.
And it doesn't mean that it doesn't still hurt. Of course
Right.
it still
Sure.
hurts
Yes.
when you fail. But I love the point that you are making, that failure took you more to the person only you could be, not away from it. Failure takes you closer to it. Fascinating.
Yes, thank you.
Well, was there something you wanted to say to that before I hop in?
Well, I actually feel like have become more confident because of my failures, because you just realize, like, life doesn't end. People still love you.
Your worth doesn't go down.
No, and so you'd think failure makes you less confident, but I found after that Senate race, which is my recent life lesson, that I actually felt more confident.
Yeah.
Because I did something, I failed, life went on. And I met some new people and learned some new things, so we're good.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Well, and all those experiences help us. Like, and as I've watched your path, I mean, you've stayed on course, but done some deviations of things. Each of them lead us to the next thing. And so who knows what that will lead you to next.
True.
And I think you'd be fantastic in office, so I think you should run again. But one of the other things I want to talk about is, as you really have had grown your family and a business at the same time. And I've also watched you with so much grace. I like DM you about this, but I love how you also put your faith front and center, regardless of everything else. So what are some guiding principles that have helped you over the years as you've grown your business, grown your family, and grown your faith that have helped you to thrive in that way?
Yes, so when we started the magazine, which was 2000, I had 2 kids in diapers. I had a 2.5-year-old and a baby. And then have added 3 more through the years. And so they have gone hand in hand. And it's been a beautiful life. I grew up in Idaho. My dad was not a farmer, but we lived in the middle of farms. And so those analogies work for me. That's what I heard in church growing up, is all the farm analogies. And I feel like I'm growing words. I grow pages. And so we've had our kids involved along the way too, in some ways where they can. And some of that's been more failure. But that's okay.
Good for them too.
But what it has meant is that I've ebbed and flowed. So every time I have a newborn, I pull back. And because it's impossible. I've nursed them all, and so I can't keep the same schedule. And I step off some boards or this or that, and then ramp up and adjust. But I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a woman, is that we do continually re-navigate who we are with God. And I think we do that to a greater degree than perhaps men, who they just plan on working. They're gonna work. They're gonna provide for the family. And women often ebb and flow more, so it keeps us praying about it. It keeps us thinking about, what should I do? And I think that's a gift. I don't see that as something that's unfair for women. I think it's awesome, actually.
I love how your story teaches us that, and teaches us that women can be whoever they want to be, partnered with God, and that's going to look a little bit differently than your neighbor.
Yes,
right?
It will. And there are times that are hard, and I've wondered, okay, should I adjust? Because I'll see women in the neighborhood walking when I'm pulling out of the driveway headed for a crazy day of appointments and staff meetings and meeting with the lawyer or whatever it is, and I think, oh, that looks nice. And I have had periods of time when I've been able to do more of that than others, but we all have just our own journey, and it's really okay. I have 5 sisters and 6 sisters-in-law. And so I'm surrounded by women who've all lived life a really different way and have different marriages, some that are more traditional and some that are more, I would say, equal on who earns the money and does the chores around the house. And it's all good. There's not one right way. I want my kids to get to adulthood feeling that way, that I don't have to do it the way mom did. There's other ways, because everybody's given a different journey and a different set of situations, a different set of circumstances.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love this conversation so much. And there's so many different directions I want to go from all the things that you're saying. But as you think about looking back, what would you tell young Jeanette now with these years of experiences? Or would you have done all the same things that you did before?
I don't feel like I live in regret very much. I'm always a mile down the road, not wallowing in this, which is a pro and a con. But if I could talk to that person, I would tell her to calm down, take a nap. I would tell her to take care of herself a little bit better. Because of just this past year, I'm realizing that I've not taken care of my physical self as well as I have my intellectual and spiritual self, perhaps. I shorted myself on sleep for a long time, and didn't prioritize my own wellness very high on the list. It felt like I didn't have a choice to do that. And maybe if I went back and redid it, I would again feel like, I don't really have the choice. But there are consequences when we don't take care of ourselves. And so I would tell her that. I would give her a warning.
What does that look like to you now, taking care of yourself, when you say that? What does it look like for you?
So sleep is one thing that I have definitely prioritized. And COVID actually helped me with that. There are a lot of blessings of COVID, and one of them was that for me. I didn't need to get up and go anywhere a lot of times, and I didn't need to put on heels. I didn't need to do that, and so it gave me more of a chance to catch up on my sleep and prioritize that and walk out of the family room when it's still really fun, but I should probably go to bed. So that's been good. And also, I've become a voracious reader on nutrition, and I've been trying to figure that out a little bit better for me, and that's been awesome, actually. And when I got cancer and I immediately went into wellness mode, one of the feelings that I was standing in my pantry, and I thought, this journey is not just for you. And so I thought, well, I'll try and get my family, I'm still unraveling what that might mean, but trying to help my family eat more vegetables, little less Little Caesars pizzas, because a life of busyness sometimes leads to a life of convenience on food, I've found, and that's not always the best. So that's been good for me. Also, I think I would have told 25-year-old me, when we started our magazine, we sent it out, this was September 2000, and our emails immediately went down, like for about 2 days, well, maybe a little less than 2 days. I was a basket case because I'm thinking, I'm sure everyone's trying to email me right now. I'm sure no one was. But like, I'm thinking, they just barely saw this. They're probably writing for info on how to subscribe and, and I would have just calmed down, Sometimes I hear now about people who are going to start a magazine and it might be a competitor to us. A younger me was worried about that. The older me is like, cool, more people in the industry. Yeah, we're colleagues and this will be fun to get to know each other. And so I have evolved. The younger me was just wanting so badly to succeed, I guess is the right word. I think I was a little afraid of failure. And, failure teaches you not to be as afraid. So I'm grateful for my failures too.
Yeah. In your life and in your career, you've had the opportunity to meet a lot of really amazing people.
That's been a fun part.
Which I think every person is amazing. And if we sit down with every person, we can learn really cool things about people's stories.
It's really
but
true.
you've had the opportunity to really deal in stories with people. So what are some of the things that you've learned from interviewing these people and from having them in your magazine over the years?
And I agree with you. Everybody has a cool story.
Yeah.
And that's been fun to unravel. One of the things I've learned is that people who have processed their stories are my favorite to interview. And that often comes with age. And so people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s are the best interviews because they can talk about their failures as a path to learning and growing. And the younger people, they're so fun to interview because they're so excited and they have a lot of goals, but they haven't processed the dots in their life.
They haven't been to as much therapy as the rest of us.
See, there you go. They haven't realized what they learned from their childhood, not just what they regret. So that's been fascinating. And also, I've learned how to get people to talk because, like the two of you on the show, you want people to tell you stories. So you have to ask the right questions. And with some people, that's harder than others. But eventually, my goal is always to get them to tell me stories. And nowadays, we can Google people and we really can learn most of the facts. And so then what you need is this story. You don't want to ask them, where were you born? And, because you get just facts.
Yeah, you want to jump into the meat.
Tell me a story about what you learned. Often it's what went wrong.
Yeah.
What you learned, how that led you here, And those are really great stories. And so my goal is always to get them to tell me stories and then to figure out a way to share that in a way that's meaningful and relatable.
And I think that one of the things, I'm thinking about the future. You're a futuristic thinker. I always see you looking ahead, which I love. And I think that it's a little bit easier in the world today, even to be a woman with dreams and goals, and to be a woman of faith with dreams and goals than even it was when you started. And so I'm wondering with what you know about what's happened in the past, what would you say to people now moving forward to be that woman who wants to be the woman of faith and a woman of business or goals or habits or whatever that is, and a woman who grows a family at the same time? What kind of advice do you have for her? And what kind of are some of the things that you've learned as you've navigated some of that when it hasn't been as socially acceptable?
Right. It is true. It's so much easier now to be a woman. And in the 20 years that I've been doing the magazine, the number of women that are easy for me to find and write about has increased. And so I'm happy for that. Technology makes it easier to be a woman who works from home, works while she drives, all of those things. But it also has made it harder because the barriers and boundaries have blurred. And so you're basically kind of always at work and you're always at home, so to speak.
Sure.
And so that can be tricky. But I would say to dream big, like write down your biggest, craziest goal. If you want to be the president of the United States, like write it down, even if you don't see the path yet. Make a vision board. I know that's so cliche, but they work.
We love our vision boards. Michelle and I are big fans.
I mean, it's amazing how that plays out. I made a vision board a couple years ago, and I put doctorate on there. I always want to go back to school for a PhD. It's never happened. I never really jump in. But I'd put that on there yet again. And the next year, I got an honorary doctorate from UVU. I know it's not the same thing, but I went back to my vision board, and I was like, boom. What else can we put on the vision board?
Is a thing, people.
It's a thing. Kind of worked for me. And then I would also say to be aware of your why. Some women, their dreams are attached to financial results, either by necessity or desire. Other people's whys are to contribute to society, so they're going to be awesome at nonprofits or public servant roles. If your why is to learn, you'd take a job that was harder than maybe you're prepared for because you will learn, or you'll seek out a position or an opportunity, a volunteer opportunity, anything, where you'll be mentored by the right people. And so I think to get back to what is my goal here, not necessarily trying to plot out the path, but like, what am I trying to accomplish here? And then let that help guide you. I look down the path. I also try to ask myself, what would my 60-year-old self wish I did this year?
Interesting. Great question.
Yeah. I like to imagine an older version of me. And I've had conversations with our friend Paige about this, about the older versions of us mentoring us and being in our lives. Yeah.
In fact, that might be the best mentor. If we can really channel that, is to figure out what the future you wants you to do. I mean, that might mean going back to school. That might mean, setting some financial goals and budgets that later on that person will be like, so glad you're out of debt or whatever it is. So that kind of forces you to see down the path and then come back and figure out next steps. Yeah. Sometimes I think we get caught up, and me too, on what should I do today? Everything's urgent, but if we can look down and then come back, it kind of helps things fall into place a little bit more.
I love that. So I have a question.
Okay.
If we were at the movie of your life, so it's over, and the three of us have our giant thing of buttered popcorn.
Yeah,
do you like butter?
absolutely.
Does it have to have the extra butter? Okay, so we have our
does.
extra butter,
And the soda.
and we're watching your life. What is the scene we're watching? Like, what would you want us to watch? The great
Oh my goodness.
lesson of life.
It might be 2020, honestly. I feel like it was so pivotal for me. The cancer, the COVID, the political chapter, where it was just like, kind of like my life hit pause for a minute and went crazy. And then I figured out how to move forward. I don't know how this story ends, though. I don't know what the next scene is.
It's okay, I just said one scene.
Yeah, that feels like pretty big for me. But also the scene of 25-year-old me selling our starter home, moving into an apartment to pay the first printing bill, and I didn't envision it exactly how it's turned out, but feeling like this was going to work.
Seeing something beyond yourself.
Yes. And so that scene's pretty pivotal too, because I have a son who's 23, and I know a lot of 25-year-olds, and I'm like, I wish I could kind of peek in on her, because she had a lot of courage.
Because she was
more than she has now.
Yeah.
There's some advantages to youth, and one is lack of experience.
Yeah, you believe you can do anything.
Yeah,
That's
you
so
don't
great.
know what's going to be hard. I remember I spoke at the chamber when we were had done 2 issues or something, and someone in the audience asked a question, what are you going to do? Because the other 2 people who've started magazines here have failed. I was like, there have been other people that tried this? I didn't know that. And if I'd known that, I might not have done it. So anyway, I think just that courage and that this is going to work. And also you have less to risk then,
Yes.
There's fewer people involved. I had 2 babies. I didn't have a big family of basically full-grown adults. So life is different then. So every decade of life has its blessings and its challenges. I would, that scene would be interesting for me to see now, actually. Like, what were my thoughts? What were my actions? What were my prayers at that time? I remember a little bit, but I'd love to peek in on her again.
I can totally see her.
Yeah.
I can totally see her.
That's great.
She was young and stressed about emails not working. And
And now the challenges are just different.
they're different.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And in some ways the same. You're worried about today and you're not sure what tomorrow brings.
Well, knowing what you know and knowing that you're a work in progress and that your movie is not quite done, we ask all of our guests the same question. And so we'd love for you to share with our audience. If you could give one piece of advice about how to go and be in this world, what would that be? What would that look like?
That would be get aligned with your Heavenly Father, and then don't second guess yourself, and then take action. Small, large, just don't be immobilized by the difficulty of the future, and don't be immobilized that you don't know everything. And almost plan to fail, because you will. Nothing's going to go right. I shouldn't say. I didn't mean that. Not everything is going to go right. That's what I meant. And so when you have those failures, it's not the end of the world. You're not a loser. Just be prepared to to take that lesson and move forward. That's probably what I would say about Go and Be is it takes action. And so take action. Even like today, what's an action you could take? Even like reading your scriptures is an action you're taking. Because if you don't take that action, it won't happen. No one's going to hand you the scriptures and say, you have a half an hour with no obligations, you're good. You have to choose that,
Yeah, absolutely.
and take some action.
That is so beautiful. It's been so great to sit here for a half an hour and to glean your wisdom and to look
thank
into your
you.
beautiful eyes and see your spirit, to
your
see all that
joy.
you've given to this world.
Well, thank you.
We're so thankful for that. We just want to encourage you to go and be a person who does things that only you can do. Go and be a person who is willing to fail and willing to show up time and time again in their gifts, talents, and abilities. Go and be a person who serves the world. Go and be you.
Sweet Salt. Save 15% at Siegelbook and sweetsaltclothing.com.